listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plymer. Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
This episode of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast is proudly brought to you by Rugby Analytics. Rugby Analytics is providing significant value to teams by giving players and coaches a transparent, non-biased way of measuring player performance. Coaches and players can identify strengths and weaknesses, as well as measure performance gains and losses week to week using their analysis. Send Rugby a copy of your game and they will do the heavy lifting. Rugby is the future of sports analytics. Find out more on rucky.com, ruckie.com, or look for them on LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube. All right, welcome to episode 79 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plymer, and joining me today is Kendrick Lynn. Born and raised on a dairy farm in New Zealand, Kendrick played his rugby with Southland, the Highlanders, Bay of Plenty, a short stint with the Chiefs, and also represented New Zealand in sevens. He moved to France in 2014 to play for Lyon and has been part of their coaching staff since 2016. He's also a physical education teacher, and it's a pleasure to have him on the show. So welcome, Kendrick.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers. So before we get stuck into the interview, what's the situation like in France in terms of the COVID lockdown? For you personally, and on a rugby level, what are some of the initiatives that Lyon's taking to support their coaches and athletes during this time?
Yeah, obviously, she's pretty trying times for everyone at the moment. We're into our second week of a full confinement or lockdown in the country, and we actually need a form that we print off online where we need to cross the right box of the reason we're leaving our house with the date and the time with our ID. And there's only certain reasons, for example, getting essentials, essential work and things like that. So fortunately, we've got a house for our kids to run around, because I know for others it's even harder who are in apartments, which many people are here in France. In terms of the sport-wise, yeah, really hard having to deal with that. And yeah, the main priority was just making sure everyone was healthy, and everything after that was a secondary kind of thing. And so once we understood what we needed to do, and everyone was going to be confined to their house, we had a few Zoom meetings with the whole squad and with staff, and just to make sure everyone was okay and understood the seriousness of the situation. And then we went about finding out what each guy's individual situation was going to be, whether it be a house with a yard or an apartment, and what kind of things they had at their disposal in terms of keeping fit, really. And then from there, it's just been a matter of keeping in constant contact with the guys just to make sure everything's going okay for them and their families, and the mental health kind of things and that kind of mess. But that's the most important thing we're putting a lot of onus on as a coaching staff and as a club, just keeping in touch. And then, with that, just our trainers are keeping in touch with the guys as well, and just making sure the guys understand just to keep ticking over and have little programs that they can do with what they have at their disposal.
Yeah, and that's so important too, just from the mental health and well-being, to keep exercising, not just to sit on your couch, but to keep the motor running.
That's right, and I mean all the guys are really keen to be in touch and to ask lots of questions and to find the most efficient ways to keep fit and in shape. Basically just for their own mental health and well-being, and everyone in their families are getting into it as well. It's not just them. And then hopefully if there is that small chance that we might be able to get a competition at some stage, then they'll be as ready as possible really to get back into training.
Okay, well, touched a little bit on your rugby backstory in the intro. Can you give us a bit of a rundown there? How'd you start up, and how'd you progress through your various age grades and things like that?
Well, I played a lot of sports when I was young, and I definitely wasn't really an age grade standout or star. Probably played more cricket than rugby, to be honest. But then I went down to study at University of Otago down in Dunedin, and played a bit of club footy there. And really enjoyed it. Actually had 1 year our coach was Richard Shuttleworth, who you've had on your pod.
Yeah, I knew when I saw you went to Otago that I was going to ask about him.
Yeah. So, we had him and really enjoyed my time. And basically from there, once I got my degree in physical education, and it was just actually as I was going for my last exams, I got asked if I wanted to come down and have a go for Southland down in the ITM Cup. So my now wife, Rebecca, I was dating at the time, she's from there. So I was pushing that direction from her family and went down, gave it a go, and then, played for Southland and then managed from there to make New Zealand Sevens. Which really helped me eventually pushing on to Super Rugby and with the Highlanders. So, I managed to forge a reasonable career in New Zealand before heading over to France.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. It's some good. You would have been around some great coaches too, which no doubt you'll touch on later on when we get to that point. And Richard Shuttleworth was a perfect example of one there too. So how did you end up getting into coaching? No doubt being a phys ed teacher had a bit to do with it.
Well, when I actually was playing for Southland, it was really only semi-pro, and so I spent most of my years teaching at one of the schools there.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that side of things. I spent a year as well working for Southland as their rugby development officer, where I'd go around all the schools in the region, just working with the kids and coaching. And so I'd already had a taste of it then, which I really, really enjoyed. Ever since I was 18, I kept a little black book with just ideas and methods and things like that of coaches that I had throughout my career, and just noted it all down.
That's great.
I just thought it would be interesting. And, as I was kind of coming, my knees were pretty busted when I got to France. I was on a bit of borrowed time. And in my last year of playing, actually, our backs coach was Scott Wisemantle.
Right, okay.
And he had kind of asked the question, what do I think about doing when I finished? And I said, well, I'll consider coaching. Not sure if there'd ever be the avenue. He was leaving the next year after that, and we had an opportunity. We had a new coaching staff come in. And he I think, put the idea out there to the new coaching staff that came in that it could be an option. And that just so happened the year after that, they were looking to expand their staff. And I ended up having to basically have an operation on my knee, which is really a career ending. And so I still had half the season to go. And the head coach at the time, Pierre Mignoni, just asked if I wanted to basically go on trial. He was interviewing other coaches at the time, and maybe with the thought of bringing me on the next season. And so, still as a team, I just started helping him out. And from there, he offered me the role. So I actually went straight from in the same team playing to coaching the very next year. So it was a pretty fast transition, but I've absolutely loved it. Ever since.
So that would have been challenging because you're going to have some pretty tough conversations with guys who might have been more senior than you in the club, and guys you were mates with. How was that in that first year?
Yeah, it was. It was really challenging. We had some guys like Fred Michalak and Julian Bonnier, guys who were my age, if not older than me, and with just world class experience and players. And I think I was helped by Pierre. Pierre's a really he's a good head coach. He runs a pretty strong cutter. And so a lot of the hard conversations in my first year were had by Pierre, and it allowed me to go about my work. I just tried to really just work as hard as I possibly could to gain the respect of the guys in that way, just to show them I was doing everything I could to make them better players and help the guys win and become better, better as individuals as well. So there was definitely some interesting times because at the same time my French was kind of pretty average as well. I'd been in the country for 2 years, and it's a pretty complicated language to learn. When I first arrived, we had Australian coaches like Scotty, and we also had Tim Lane when I first arrived. There was a lot of English getting spoken, so my French was a little behind, but I just threw myself in the deep end and just did all the sessions in French, or what would have been pretty terrible pigeon French as it was, but and just kind of went from there and just did as little. I try not to change who I was, especially from what I was as a player. Just stayed the same, but just a different role.
Yeah, and that would have gone a long way, no doubt. So now that you're in the coaching game and you look back, who have been some of those? You've mentioned a bunch of quality coaches there. Who have been some of the biggest influences on you as a coach so far in your career? And what was, you talked about your black book there, what were some of the big lessons that you got from certain coaches?
I'd say one of the, obviously Scotty Wiseman's who I still keep in touch with now. He's been really good. When I first got the opportunity to possibly trial as the coach of the team, I was injured and I asked to fly back to New Zealand early for Christmas, and I spent a week with the Highlanders because I'd played with Tony Brown 2010 and got to know him that way, and he was coaching the Highlanders at that stage, and I followed him for a week and it was just outstanding. It really confirmed to me that it was something I'd love to do, and he's just got such a great way of looking at the game, constantly looking to grow and innovate. He really loves trying things out and had a really good rapport with the players. And so that helped me so much. And so, they're two of the bigger guys that, that have really helped form me into who I'd like to, to be a coach I'd like to become eventually. And, with the Black Book, the interesting thing about the Black Book was a lot of actually drills and exercise and things like that. I don't actually use that more, but it definitely just did give me a little bit of a guidance as to how guys coached and things like that. I mean, I had another kind of person who, I had 3 months with the Chiefs at the end of my career before I flew over to France. At that stage, we had Wayne Smith coaching, and he was just fantastic. I'd heard a lot about him, and it was really all confirmed when I got the chance to be coached by him. And his family's from the same little town as my family in New Zealand.
Cool.
So there's a little special something there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Yeah, Wayne Smith is definitely a guy I'd love to have a chat with, and he's one from the Pierre Villeperot school, which, coaching now in France must be interesting. I've really liked watching the French national team this season. I thought they were playing, that French rugby of old to a point. What have you seen, like in terms of that French style that maybe someone like Wayne Smith picked up and really grabbed onto?
Yeah, well, I guess like some of the things you were seeing a bit more with the French team was their ability to keep the ball alive and playing a little bit more that was in front of them. Just seeing the space and playing to the space and using a good variance between their playing, ball in hand or their kicking game, playing behind or through or around teams, all those kind of things that Villeperot was really big on. And Wayne Smith, obviously, especially Wayne Smith, of just his ability to impart on players just the importance of decision making and problem solving, not actually just giving you straight answers, but asking the right questions and getting you to come to the right kind of conclusions yourself was just such a big part of it. And I think you can see that now. The French team right now really do have a good group of players coming through. Systems are starting to get a lot better, and so really they've had like 10, 12 years of pretty underperforming really, but I think now they're starting to get their act together.
Yeah, still got to get that discipline sorted out though.
Starting for the French game.
It's like, I thought it was tough being a Wallabies fan, but being a French fan, and it must be tough when those little moments happen. Cool. All right, so on to your role at Lyon. You've got a pretty, we were talking before we hit record, you got a pretty interesting role at Lyon. You're not actually, you actually, walk both sides of the street in terms of attack, defence, turnover, those kind of things. Can you talk a little bit about your role in general?
Yeah, for sure. My role specifically is the backs coach, which I really enjoy, and so I have my group of backs to work with, but also between Pierre and myself and our other forwards coaches, we cover off all parts of the game, both sides of the ball, as you say, attack and defence, and that's kind of shown with our training week. So we don't really have days dedicated to certain parts of the game. Every kind of training we'll be looking to tick off all parts, whether it be attack, defence, or the transition between the two. And so it's a kind of broad role, and it's really great because you do get to upskill in a lot of areas, and it does mean that we do have a pretty coherent kind of way of doing things within the team, because we're all seeing the same pictures ideally and all discussing things, and there's not guys working off in their own corner.
Yeah, cool. I really like that. What's the philosophy behind having training sessions where you're all parts of the game are being checked off every session? What's the philosophy behind that?
Well, I guess it's just trying to make it as realistic as possible.
Yeah.
We really try and base our trainings to make it as game-like and specific to what the guys are going to encounter on the Saturday. And so whether that be, you might have a slightly more focused attack, session on attack, but there'll be turnovers within that, and then we'll just let it play out, play out the errors and play out the mistakes and pull the ground and let it develop and let things emerge into themselves, and so the guys can find solutions to what happens. So that's the same with our coaching as well. The fact we don't have set kind of roles in terms of the broad attack and defence, it's just kind of done between us, and hopefully that makes it a little bit more fluid for the guys during the week.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool. I love it. It's pretty. It seems more original than maybe in other. If you go over to other clubs, they'd have a more designated kind of demarcation of duties there. So I really like that. I think that's great. And what if someone was to come and watch one of your sessions where you're coaching the entire team? What's some of the things they're going to see and hear during, say, a 20-minute session with you?
Well, hopefully there'll be a fair bit of games involved, fair bit of chaotic movement, everyone kind of, in movement, at pace, not too much standing around, and ideally you wouldn't hear too much from me. I tend to want to let the guys kind of, just set an environment where the guys can find their own solutions to problems that are posed, put little constraints on them in terms of the rules and the players, and to try and work out exactly what we're trying to get out of the session. Hopefully a bit of laughing. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
it'll depend on what stage of the season or what the weather's like. But in general, I tend to try and just hold back in terms of what I'm saying from a coaching until the end, or only in certain times, or maybe just quickly with individuals to coach them on the go. Yeah. And then ideally the guys are kind of doing the main bit of the coaching themselves at the end. We try and use as much games and chaos and that kind of thing as possible. Yeah,
no, that's cool. That's right up my alley. So yeah, if I'm in France, I'll definitely knock on your door.
Yeah, you'd be welcome, mate.
Awesome. And what about when you got the backs? How do you? We talked a little bit about this before the interview. You got some pretty cool stuff around how your philosophy on building a back line and set plays and the values of that back line. What could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I guess it's quite cool having an overall broad kind of coaching role, but also having the backs, and that we can form our own kind of our values in our group and really nail in what we're trying to achieve as a back line, because that's the key. So we're all seeing the same pictures and understand how we want to attack the space when we see it. And yeah, we've got 2 or 3 key values that we have, and I tap into those values every week. And for example, that's how I'll base my reviews. When we do a backline review on a Monday, it'll be that game. We'll just be tapping into each of our values, and if we see them and how they manifest themselves in the game.
Yeah.
And then also I'm having my key stats I use with the backs as well, just around those values. So it's really just reinforcing them and just making sure we're living them all the time. And so with the trainings, it's the same kind of thing. I'll be basing the trainings around the game. And then within that, adding in different kind of rules and trying to get the guys to come up with their own ways to do things. And it's really cool. We've got a really good bunch of guys. We've started adding in different one of the best sessions we have is on Tuesday afternoons, and what used to be a video session of a review of the training, now that only lasts 5 minutes, and now it's more about the guys get up and get to speak about themselves. Get to speak about things they've learnt during the week, and it's just kind of like a general session of just getting to know each other better on a deeper level. And I think it's one of the really important things here in France, because you underestimate that there's so many different cultures here. There's Belgians and English and Fijians and Kiwis, Aussies, South Africans and French, and so you really it's a little bit harder to understand where guys have come from and why they play the game. And so we spend a lot of time on that. And try and bring that all around the full circle into why we play for each other with those values.
That's cool. I love that stuff. Just going back a bit to first phase and gamifying it. How do you set up kind of some what would be some games based stuff that you do, but where you're also focusing on first phase attack for your backs?
Well, with our first phase attack, I tend to just give the guys a bit of a menu of options, but their menu's only used because really it's Lyon's the food capital of France, so it's just a kind of a good way to put it on paper. And from there, it's all about understanding what the moves are, or having options off that move depending on where that set pace might be, how the defence is set up, who's defending where. And so often we'll start a game, whatever that might be, Fiji touch or baller touch, something like that, with a set play. And then we might throw the defenders. I might get them to defend in different positions straight off to give different pictures. Also might ask the attacking team to have to try and score off a kick, or just little things like that, just to get it going, and then from there we'll roll straight into a game.
I love doing that stuff. I also like playing around with the defence and maybe telling the 10-12 to shoot up and the 13 to hold back, or to slide out wide to see if they recognise that space, things like that. Yeah, cool, awesome. All right, so you've been playing and coaching in France since 2014. For people who haven't experienced French rugby, can you explain a little bit about how it's different, how it would differ to say New Zealand, and what are some of the things that you came across or still come across now that are very unique to French rugby?
Yeah, it's a crazy place. It's a fantastic place to be involved with rugby. It's somewhere I always wanted to be. The culture's just so strong here with the footy, and so with that, what's really cool is you get such, like within, say if I'm talking about the top 14, you have, as opposed to say the Super Rugby, you have so many different styles of play.
Yeah, right.
So whether that be the difference between Clermont or Toulouse, pretty free-flowing, fast, rustling metro, compared to the teams like Castres or Agen, even Toulon, who are pretty frontal and pretty physical, it can really vary from team to team, from region to region. So you get that real difference. And you also, one of the really cool things with France, it's the supporters are just outstanding, and so you get these crowds who are just intense, and the bands are going, and sometimes some of the things you come across, like we had a big game against Castres recently, and they were in a little bit of problems, relegation kind of area, and so that just spices the game up so much when you get promotion relegation over here. And so even though they're down the bottom of the table, they're paying for their livelihood, and it really added an extra element. And I mean, we couldn't even get our bus into the ground because the supporters blocked us off.
Awesome.
And so
good job.
The flag, yelling at us and banging the bus. And
nice.
At the time, but when you look back on it, it's just what makes it so interesting. It's so colourful. I mean, I guess one of the other harder things though you find here is it's a little bit like there's a little bit more uncontrollables, and that's to say that sometimes with away games, you do feel like you don't get as much of the rub of the green with the ref, or maybe the crowd is really influencing, or getting up that home team a little bit extra. Sometimes that can be frustrating as a coach, where you feel like you've done everything you possibly could to prepare the team, and some things don't go your way. But then at the same time, that probably happens the inverse when you're playing at home. It's just one of the beauties of the game over here. But the guys are super passionate as players. That they really get behind it, and they love the rivalries. You always have good battles of certain teams, and so it's really interesting. I really love it. Like I find some people can sometimes come over and see things and it's done differently, and it's not how it's done in New Zealand or Australia, and it's
the worst thing you can do.
That's right. You can't find the type. The best thing is to just appreciate it for what it is, and there are some things that translate, and I think especially the last few years the French game has really adapted. It's got faster, the ball in plays higher. They're working a lot more on their catch pass and their ball movement like they used to, and so that's made it really interesting and really cool. And it's got so much potential here, really, with the amount of players, just the facilities they have, the money that's in the game, and the passion as well around. So it's an interesting place to be, and it's an interesting place to coach as well, because I feel like it's a little bit. Sometimes it's about the players we're getting here. It's about breaking bad habits almost.
Right.
a lot of the systems I've had in terms of the youth development, so it's a lot about it. It's the opposite of what you think of France. It's more about attacking the man rather than the space. And so when you do get guys, sometimes you just need to like break them back down and understand what you're trying to do. It depends on your team to team, but it also means there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
There's a lot of space to really get great growth with guys, and so it's exciting.
Yeah. So, yeah, one of the things for me for French rugby that stands out is, well, a couple ones is like that willingness to just play really positive rugby and keep the ball alive and, offload, as often as possible. And then the other one is not being able to win away from home. And you touched on that a bit, and I was hoping you would have worked out the formula on how to do that, but it doesn't sound like you have.
Well, to be honest, we've gone okay as a team, and I think it's a general mindset that is changing in France pretty rapidly. Awesome. So when I first arrived in 2014, it was definitely there, and it was a real shock, and it is for a lot of the foreigners, because you just get the impression sometimes that the guys just aren't up for an away game, but now it's definitely not like that. Away games are viewed exactly the same as home games. They're prepared just as hard, or if not harder in a lot of cases, and so it is changing. You're seeing more and more away results. But I remember reading a really interesting article about that, actually, because when I first arrived, I was like, man, what is going on here? But and I remember reading that when rugby, when it was first getting going in France, way back in the amateur days, when players used to play for their local village, and it was all about defending the clock chime. So basically, you defend the area as far as you could hear the church bells going.
Right.
And they would just defend that to death, kind of thing, basically. Yeah. Like it was a real bloodbath when the local village would come in and play, and so they still have that thing of just like, on your turf, you just, you put everything out there to defend your turf. And that's why as well it is so hard to win away, because teams are just so up for it in their home games.
Yeah, cool. What about coach development, about you developing yourself? What are some of the things that you've been able to do while you've been in Lyon? And, what are some of the cool experiences you had with that?
Yeah, the club's really open to letting us get out and develop personal development and professional. And so every year I've been able to get back to New Zealand and spend time with the Super Rugby team. Which has been fantastic. Just recently, about 5-6 months ago, myself and our GPS man went over and spent some time with Saracens to learn. A lot of the coaches are always trying to get out and about, and we also have a good. We get along well with the local basketball team here, who are really good. They're owned by Tony Parker, and the football team here, OL, are really good as well. And so we exchange with them. We had a really good exchange with the French basketball national team as well, actually, as a coaching staff. So we do that as much as possible. We had planned to have the French sevens team train with us last week in preparation for our game against Toulouse, but obviously that's off now. So. Yeah, everyone's really open-minded and looking to grow as much as possible.
Okay, cool. You mentioned other sports there. What have been some of the things you've been able to take away from sports like soccer and basketball?
Especially just the way the coaches go about the communication and their ability to see space and how the players move into space. We watched the French basketball team train one time, and it was really impressive in terms of that, and the guys reacting off each other and creating space for each other. And definitely it was just talked about as well that one of the things I got from the French natural coach was just how simple his game plan was. And he just tried to strip everything back, right back to the basics. And you see that often the higher you go, the higher level, the simpler it is. And so I really took a lot from that, yeah. Yeah,
that's good to see that transferred, good to hear that in rugby as well, that it's a simple game. So, yeah, that's awesome. All right, Kendrick, we always finish the show with the same final 4 questions. When you were a kid growing up in New Zealand, who were some of the players that you first saw and said, wow, that's I want to play rugby and this is why?
Yeah, actually one of the first I remember was Philippe Salah. And it's kind of strange that it ended up in France. He actually, when I was looking to come here as a player, he actually rang me because he's the director of rugby at Agen.
That's awesome.
And it was one of the greatest days of my life.
That's great. That's awesome.
I couldn't get there, but I loved him. I loved that French team in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And early 90s. And then after that, especially being a Kiwi, I just loved Christian Cullen. I had a poster of him up on my wall in my bedroom. They are the two of the guys that growing up had a big impression on me.
Yeah, I don't have many favourite All Blacks, but he's definitely my favourite All Black.
Yeah.
No, just joking. No, yeah, he's excellent, Christian Cullen. I loved watching him play. It was he's just silk. It's awesome. Yeah. And what about now? Who are some of the players going around that you like watching?
I'm a big fan of Damien McKenzie.
Yeah.
I like that he's just a little fella who's come through from Southland, and that's where I played for a long time as well. It looks like he's enjoying himself all the time with a smile on his face when he kicks, and I think he's genuinely one of the players at the moment that people really would actually pay to go and see and go and watch a game live or switch on the telly because he's playing.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for the game, in the sense that just play off the cuff and not be afraid to try things. So, yeah, he's I'm a big fan of the way he goes about it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, great to watch for sure. All right, and what about coaches? Who are some of the high-profile coaches that you look up to and have taken a lot away from them?
Obviously, two of the big ones would be Tony Brown and Scott Wisemantel.
Yeah.
Especially with Tony, just love his ability to come up with new ideas. He does love a set play, and he's come up with some beauty.
He sure does.
And I just like the way he gets his players to play with such confidence and freedom. And he really does get his players to move, get the teams to play with such good ball movement, as we saw with Japan in the World Cup.
Yeah.
Just really pace and ball movement and that willingness to give it a go. So I really like how he does that and instills that in his players. And with Scotty, one of the things I got from him was just his energy.
Yeah.
It was just, and in every session he was just a ball of energy, really positive, and would bring the energy, and that would come onto us as a playing group. And so, I really like that. I mean, I love that. I like watching a lot of docos, and obviously in the other sports you see on Netflix and things like that. I really like Sean Bay, what he's been doing with the LA Rams, how he's instilled the pyramid of success that he got from John Wooden.
Yeah, right.
That kind of thing, getting to that. And obviously Wayne Smith, who's a legend, I've a lot to do with, but I've had a little bit of time to pass time with him, and he's been great as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I got to say I'm pretty excited about the new Wallabies coaching ticket with Scott Wisemantel and Rennie and the rest. I think it's going to be exciting times moving forward.
Yeah, there's actually just another as well in terms of not necessarily at the professional level, but I really like the work that Magic Academy are doing in England. Russell Earnshaw and Fletcher there. I think that's just fantastic, what they're doing with the youth development, and it's just putting everything on about fun, games, touches the ball, and I really like that. So I got a lot of respect for what they're doing.
No, it's super important, and I had Rusty stay with me last summer, and Fletch was coming over in May for a conference that I'm organising, but hopefully that's still going to go ahead. But definitely want to keep connected with those guys. They're doing awesome stuff.
Yeah.
All right. And last question: who's someone out in the grassroots that's doing really good stuff, coaching in your local area that you feel deserves some recognition? Yeah,
well, we've got a guy from the UK actually in our staff who takes under 18s called Will Morgan. He came over last year and just got an outstanding attitude, real growth mindset, and we just love bouncing ideas off each other. So he helps me grow as a coach as well. I get him to watch my sessions and give me a bit of feedback. And we have every Friday afternoon at 2:00. We have a session. We go into one of the meeting rooms and we set the timer for 20 minutes and just kind of talk ideas, things we've learned during the week, and try and come up with something a little bit different, a little bit funky for the week afterwards. And he's been really great for that. We've got a GoPro to use and to give feedback to each other. And I just really like. He's really big on just developing the guys in his team as young as players and young men as well. So it's great to see.
That's awesome, and I think that stuff all coaches could do is form relationships and have regular contact with coaches in their community and try and make each other better. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things I try and do as much as possible. I've got a couple of coaches back home in New Zealand who ITM Cup guys, and we try and have Skypes as much as possible. We've got a few organised already for the lockdowns.
Yeah.
It's a great way to grow and to develop and and just keep in contact.
Yeah, cool. All right, Kendrick, it's been awesome having you on the show. I've really enjoyed the chat. There's been some great stuff right up my alley in terms of coaching the backs and just your general outlook on the game. So I've really enjoyed the chat, and thanks for giving up some of your time to come on the show and speak with everyone.
No worries.
Perfect. Cheers. This episode of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast is proudly brought to you by Rugby Analytics. Rugby Analytics is providing significant value to teams by giving players and coaches a transparent, non-biased way of measuring player performance. Coaches and players can identify strengths and weaknesses, as well as measure performance gains and losses week to week using their analysis. Send Rugby a copy of your game and they will do the heavy lifting. Rugby is the future of sports analytics. Find out more on rucky.com, ruckie.com, or look for them on LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us via Twitter at RugbyCoachesCNR or via the website therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.